Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel, Beauty and Beyond. I'm Z, your personal beauty consultant, and on this episode of How to Be a Baddie Around the World edition, we will be traveling to the Caribbean, also known as the West Indies. We will be discussing the lifestyle of the women in the West Indies, as well as the moods, attitudes, and social expectations that come with living in the Caribbean. We will also be discussing fashion trends, skincare, self-care, hair, diet, and exercise habits, tactics, and techniques that are all commonly practiced by the women that live in the West Indies. Women in the Caribbean are very proud of their culture. They take pride in taking care of their families, and they usually make sure to represent where they are from wherever they go. If I could use one word to describe the beauty standards throughout the West Indies, it would be diverse. There is no one consistent look of ideal beauty because everyone is so different and unique in their own way. More than most phenotypically homogeneous parts of the world. Throughout the West Indies, different facial features, hair types, and body types are favored. They would often say it depends on who you're asking when it comes to beauty standards. To be honest, in my research about beauty standards and practices among the women who lived throughout the Caribbean islands, I really discovered that there was a lot of pushback against the term beauty standards and the concept of it even existing among the women from the West Indies. What I learned from conversations online is that Caribbean beauty as a whole is kind of embedded into their lifestyle and environment. Their genetics are what make them beautiful, and they don't necessarily rely on cosmetics to enhance their looks. There was even a bit of emphasis on how the concept of having a 12-step beauty routine is indeed very American or Western European, mostly because environmental pollution, processed foods, and Western lifestyle in general tends to age people faster who live in those areas. There was also pushback on the thought of Caribbean women adopting these practices in general, showing appreciation for the fact that women in the West Indies are not really reliant on consumer cosmetics and cosmetic procedures or anything beyond basic daily upkeep. However, I still believe that there exists a nuance of beauty standards amongst their own individual cultures and beyond the effects of colonialism propaganda that has been inevitably ingrained into their history. Most, if not all, ethnic countries were colonized by the Europeans, and don't get me wrong, obviously, that has most definitely had an effect on the beauty standards that are upheld to this day. However, beyond that, the similarities and the familiarity that we hold amongst one another within our own individual ethnic groups and societies, I believe is what creates room for the concept of beauty and beauty standards in that context. And so when I make these videos and when I talk about these things, I want you to understand that on a spectrum of seeing beauty through a white or European lens, which is inevitable for most of us because it literally exists in the DNA, I try to do my best to research and talk about the things that stem from the unique and diverse cultural practices while still being practical about the world that we live in today and just being honest about how most of us perceive beauty and how we have perceived beauty over time. If you haven't noticed, the topic of beauty and beauty standards and cultural beauty, unique beauty, everybody's been talking about it lately. And it's really not a secret anymore. The perception, the international perception, just the way that we see and treat beauty on a daily basis, it's becoming more on the surface. It's not a secret anymore. And if you're scared, girl, go to church. What I also think is important, though, is being honest about these things because honesty is what creates the balance of why we are the way we are when it comes to beauty, individually and collectively, because there's always an even ground somewhere. And even if we feel like it's wrong to do that, we still entertain it anyway, because Jubilee is getting millions of views with their ranking beauty videos. At the end of the day, yes, the answer is genetics, but there is something we can all learn from every culture and every ethnicity when it comes to beauty. And it doesn't have to be so scary and controversial as long as it's open and honest and understood to be as subjective as it is. For example, Carnival is an ongoing and very popular tradition. In an article titled Carnival's Indigenous Origins from Northeastern University, the early Caribbean Digital Archive states, since its origins of rebellion against enslavement in the late 18th century on the island of Trinidad and Tobago, emerging in a ritual called canes brûlés, French for sugarcane burning, enslaved Africans purposefully set fire to sugarcane intended for sale, resisting plantation slavery through the destruction of its valuable export commodity, sugar. Instruments resembling drums and sticks were used during canes brûlés to perform percussive music linked to the African roots of enslaved people. This music reconnected the performers with their ancestors and the past spirits that guided and sustained them. This musical performance was an act of reclaiming cultural vitality, taking ownership of their culture and enacting empowerment through these acts of rebellion. Canes brûlée would later become known as cane brûlée, which today we call Carnival. Today, Carnival is an act of celebration for freedom throughout the entire Caribbean diaspora across the world, where people celebrate their culture and remember all the pain that their ancestors endured. Carnival is a direct reflection of Caribbean culture, in my opinion, and each island has its own special version of Carnival, which is really interesting to me. However, there are exceptions like Jamaica, which barely has any real historical ties to Carnival besides the fact that it was started in the early 90s as a copy of traditional Trinidadian Carnival. Carnival is a little different in the Dominican Republic because it lost most of its religious origin and became attached to the Dominican independence. In fact, many Dominicans believe the carnival is a celebration of their independence. Therefore, it's actually celebrated on every Sunday of February. Overall, carnival throughout the West Indies, I've never been able to experience it before, but hopefully I will in the future. But it just seems like an elaborate display of culture and celebration, and it comes from a really genuine place from the outside looking in. The costumes are obviously gorgeous. The traditional big elaborate costumes that emphasize their unique body shapes and dancing skills. They're usually embellished with rhinestones and super colorful, very like whimsical kind of looking type of aesthetics, stockings, fishnets, high heels, or maybe just sandals. Like I know that there are more feather costumes and more of like the English parts of the West Indies, but overall I think that's the best example of what I'm trying to convey about beauty and how it doesn't have to necessarily always come through a colonialized lens or a European lens. We have to start, giving credit to the people who actually had to create a culture within a culture that kind of subverted what they already had going on. As far as the moods, attitudes, and social expectations of most Caribbean women, they are actually usually educated or they prioritize education and success. At the same time, they are very family oriented. Caribbean women are known to be very sweet and kind, but they do mostly have a no nonsense kind of attitude, like don't piss them off. They can be very ambitious and business oriented women, with most of them being entrepreneurs. Caribbean women are also known for being very confident overall, in a way that you just can't blame them for because they're just usually very well-rounded and self-sufficient individuals. Lastly, I believe Caribbean women have a kind of fearlessness that is just a direct result from their lifestyle and overall outlook on life. They move through life in a very calm way while also handling business and keeping things in order, but still having fun while doing it. Women in the West Indies are known for their amazing physiques, which is really just achieved mostly naturally by way of active daily physical activities that they mostly ingrained into their culture. However, women from Jamaica especially are known to dominate in sports like track and field, swimming, and long jumping. It can also, however, be assumed that they keep up their physique through activities like dancing because they're super well known for their dancing skills, as well as through their diets. Caribbean dishes tend to be pretty well balanced and mostly made from fresh foods. Skills like farming and gardening and gathering food organically is the norm in the West Indies. They are known for having some of the best food, and Caribbean women are known to pride themselves on being able to cook traditional dishes from their culture. On top of all of this, they live in hot climates near the beach, and if you've watched this channel and you've been watching the Beauty Around the World videos, then you know that living near the beach most likely means healthier skin, healthier hair, healthier nails. The water is more clear there and the sand is more coarse. The Caribbean is just famous for having some of the most beautiful beaches in the world in general. Overall, Caribbean style is very unique, but still niche enough to stand in its own category. Women from the West Indies are super diverse, from Puerto Rican women to Jamaican women to Dominican women to Bayesian women. But their overall style and fashion, I believe, is accompanied by their great personalities.
Tell so much about who someone is just by their style, the way they put fashion together.
I believe that confidence really is key when it comes to just being considered beautiful in the West Indies. Being confident, being true to yourself, being immersed in your culture are all things that add to your beauty. So their style and the way they dress, it really matches the vibrancy of their personality. Usually you'll see bright colors, intricate patterns, lots of layers. There are also a couple of trends that could be considered subsets to this aesthetic, like island girl makeup, which is just a new trend on TikTok, which is really just mostly the typical siren archetype, accompanied with the use of bright tropical colors and an overall more beachy aesthetic. Gold jewelry, piercings, and accessories, especially when they're layered on top of each other, is a really good example of this type of expression that kind of does give island girl tropical siren vibes. It's definitely reminiscent to traditional Southeast Asian accessories and how they wear the intricate piercings and jewelry, especially in certain areas where Indian culture is more prominent. Along with their style, there's also a professional aspect, but it always leans more towards glam because they use really bright colors and they wear elaborate hairstyles. The makeup definitely depends on what part of the Caribbean you're from and what they prefer. But overall, it's really no surprise because there are so many Caribbean celebrity fashion and style icons. So it's just another thing on the list that they're literally known for being amazing at. So Rihanna, of course, she has a huge empire and her entire brand is literally being from the West Indies, being an island girl. Her entire brand is diversity. It just all makes sense. Grace Jones, fashion icon, Nicki Minaj, icon. Well, with that being said, that's all I have for y'all today. I really enjoyed making this video for you all. I'd also like to give a shout out to my patrons. Thank y'all so much. Shout out to the girls in the Discord. It's always great talking to y'all there. Definitely, if you would like to join the community here on Beauty and Beyond, we accept all women with open arms who like to be honest and transparent about their beauty habits, their beauty journeys, and we just like to have fun over there. So definitely check it out if you would like. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. I cannot thank you all